everyone. This is Hunter, and this is Beethoven, and we will be discussing Paul Appleby's Government is Different, although I'll probably do most of the talking. So this is the second of two video summaries for Paul Appleby. So hopefully the remake is as good as the original. So Paul Appleby talking about the difference between government and, well, business. So we've been talking about the difference between administration and politics. He kind of lumps those two together to be government. That might be a hint for Dr. Dumont's discussion question. Anyway, he talks about the difference between government and business, has very strong words and opinions about it. Starts off this piece saying that the dissimilarity between government and all other forms of social action is greater than any dissimilarity among those forms themselves. Essentially saying that government is different from everything else, more so than everything else is different from everything else. So a pretty big statement, and he tries to back it up for the rest of his piece. So he starts his argument with a metaphor of a judge and a lawyer representing government and business. So like the government, a judge will equally and fairly administer the laws, does not have self-interest, but is interested in servicing the people, and a lawyer, much like business, has its own objectives and goals, has the client that the lawyer is working for, trying to be successful for them, working within the law. So they're both working with the same thing, but different goals, one being outward, one being inward. So it furthers the separation by saying that not only the two jobs are different, but the skills involved are different as well, and that these skills do not necessarily transfer. Again, strong words. He says that the most capable business executive in the country might be a most dismal failure in the government. So strongly opinionated about this, and he feels that just because you can do one doesn't mean you can do both, and that goes both ways, from business to government or government to business. Part of that is because you have different attitudes, kind of going back to the goals and objectives of the two. The governmental attitude, as Appleby calls it, is more outward looking, public service oriented, trying to do things fairly and equally for all. And then business has the mindset of being more self-interested, and trying to do things for their own. He does make one exception, or exception, that people who are successful in business but were raised in a successful family already tend to have a more governmental attitude, because instead of thinking about making money, they're thinking about managing and sustaining that money, and have time to be more outward looking, more so than someone trying to just make money for themselves. So he doesn't have all bad things to say. Let's see. So another big thing that he has is the three complementary aspects that go to differentiate government from all other institutions and activities. Those being the breadth of scope, impact, and consideration as one, public accountability as two, and political character being the third. So scope, impact, and consideration speaking that government has a larger scope than any business, because the federal government is nationwide, and has to equally and fairly make laws for people that don't benefit one more over the other. So it can be very difficult trying to be that broad, but still make something that's good for all. Business, on the other hand, they have the ability to focus on smaller markets and certain regions where if something's unique, they can respond to that, and not necessarily and kind of contain it, rather than making something for that particular region and applying it everywhere and it not being successful everywhere because it was made just for that region. So the second is consideration, public accountability. So the government is held to a higher public accountability than business. Anything that goes wrong in business has a more of a microscope over it, and also because government people who work for the government can say more things about the government negatively than you could if you're working for a business and speaking bad about the business. The business could fire you, get rid of you, hush you up. The government, on the other hand, can't necessarily do that. And Appleby speaks to an example of that in his piece. So the third is political character. So this kind of goes back to politics and administration, and if there is a difference, that is what we have to respond to Dr. Dumont on for this week. So he puts it together. He doesn't really differentiate the two, partly because a lot of the administrative jobs are assigned through political means, but also because politics, as he says, is being able to have a broad understanding of many topics, and work on those and be able to successfully move the ball on a bunch of different things rather than specializing in one. So politics, knowing different people, managing different people, different topics, all of that. And so those are the three differentiating aspects that he goes through. And that pretty much summarizes Appleby, and thank you.